The Galactic Empire stood victorious. Their mighty fleet, unmatched in power, had crushed yet another rebellion, proving once again that resistance was futile. Across the core worlds of the Empire, celebrations erupted in grand fashion. Cities shimmered with dazzling lights, and feasts stretched for miles as people cheered for their emperor. The high-ranking officials of the fleet stood on vast platforms, raising their glasses in honor of their latest conquest. The destruction of Earth, the last stain on their perfect record, was something they had waited for centuries to achieve. To them, humanity had always been a strange anomaly, a species that refused to surrender, that fought battles even when they were hopelessly outmatched. But the Empire had grown tired of their defiance. The Emperor had finally given the order, and the Imperial Armada had descended upon the Sol system like a storm of fire and steel. The battle had not lasted long. Earth's defenders, a handful of outdated warships, had crumbled under the might of the Empire. The so-called Dreadnoughts of humanity had been nothing more than rusting relics of the past. Now, with the last embers of Earth extinguished, the Empire was free to rule the galaxy without opposition. The celebrations grew louder, laughter echoing through the grand halls of the capital world. Officers exchanged war stories, boasting about how easily they had wiped out the last human fleets. "They thought they could fight us with ancient machines," scoffed Admiral Vorik, his golden uniform gleaming under the lights of the Imperial Palace. "Pathetic. A dead world now," another officer chuckled, raising his glass. "And good riddance." Even the Emperor himself, a towering figure dressed in ceremonial armor, smiled in satisfaction. This day marks the true dawn of the Empire. No more threats. No more war. His voice boomed through the chamber as thousands of loyal subjects roared in agreement. But among the vast halls of celebration, one officer sat silently, his expression tense. Commander Rethan had been there during the final assault on Earth. He had seen something the others hadn't, something that disturbed him. In the last moments before Earth's destruction, sensors had detected strange energy readings from the planet's surface, deep beneath its oceans. At first, he had assumed it was just interference from the destruction, but something about it had felt deliberate, as if Earth had sent out a final message. Rethan had tried to report it, but the High Command had dismissed him. "Human tricks," they had said. "Nothing remains of them." But his gut told him otherwise. There was something about humanity that the Empire had never truly understood. They fought beyond logic, beyond reason, and they had always had a way of coming back. As the night of celebrations continued, deep in the void of space, a hidden fleet began to stir. Buried beneath layers of ice, deep in forgotten bunkers, Earth's true warships began to awaken. The Empire had not destroyed humanity's last line of defense. They had only given it a reason to rise again. The next morning, as the Empire's celebrations raged on, Commander Rethan's uneasy feeling only grew. He had managed to slip away from the palace after a long night of feasting and drunken revelry. He found himself standing before the Great Hall's holoscreen, gazing at the freshly compiled reports from the battle. The humans had lost, that much was certain. Their fleets were destroyed, their cities reduced to ash, their defenses crippled. Yet there was still something that didn't sit right with him. Rethan scrolled through the data again, his finger hesitating over a specific part of the report. The energy signature that had been detected from Earth's oceans, the one that no one had paid attention to, still gnawed at his mind. He had witnessed the destruction firsthand. No warships could have survived that. And yet, the data suggested that something deep within Earth had awakened right before its annihilation. He had been taught to trust in the Empire's might. It had always been infallible, its technology far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. But there had always been a nagging feeling that the humans were more than what they appeared. Even as their ancient warships crumbled before the superior firepower of the Empire, there had been a flicker of something more, something untapped, something dangerous. Rethan knew he had to investigate. He couldn't simply let it go. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them to the potential threat that Earth had left behind. In all their years of expansion, the Empire had never encountered an enemy like humanity. The humans had a strange resilience, a determination to survive that defied reason. It was this drive that had allowed them to survive the darkest moments of their history, from ancient wars to near-extinction events. And even now, with their planet reduced to rubble, Rethan couldn't shake the feeling that Earth's legacy wasn't gone. It had only been sleeping. The commander made a quick decision. He would investigate the anomaly on his own. If nothing came of it, he could report back and ease his concerns. But if there was something there, something powerful enough to rise from the ashes of humanity's defeat, then the Empire needed to know, and it needed to prepare. He left the whole screen behind and made his way to his personal quarters. There, hidden beneath layers of encrypted files, was the ancient map of Earth's oceans. It had been an old exploration project, a failed attempt by the humans to chart their planet's deepest trenches and unexplored seas. The Empire had long since ignored it, dismissing it as irrelevant. But now, Rethan realized, it might be the key to understanding what had happened during the final moments of Earth's destruction. He studied the map, tracing his finger over the coordinates. The anomaly had been detected near a region known as the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of Earth's oceans. It was a place where even the most advanced technology had failed to explore, and yet that was where the last mysterious energy signature had come from. A cold chill ran down Rethan's spine as he realized what this could mean. If humanity had hidden something there, something they had been preparing for this very moment, then the Empire had underestimated them. He quickly contacted a few trusted officers, arranging for a private expedition to the trench. If there was anything left of Earth's ancient war fleet, this was where it would be. Meanwhile, the Empire continued to revel in its false sense of invincibility. On the capital world, the Emperor's celebrations reached their peak. The elites of the Empire enjoyed their victory, believing the galaxy was finally under their control. But Rethan could sense that something was wrong. He had seen it in the eyes of his fellow officers, the same smug confidence that had been present before humanity's downfall. What they didn't know, however, was that the universe had a way of turning the tides, and deep in the forgotten depths of Earth's oceans, something stirred, something powerful, something that had been waiting for this exact moment. The old battered warships of humanity, once thought lost, were about to awaken. Rethan sat back, his mind racing. He had taken the first step in uncovering the truth. Now, he only had to wait. But with each passing second, his unease grew. The Empire had underestimated humanity before, and it had cost them dearly. If Earth's warships were real, and if they still held the power they once had, then this would be the Empire's greatest mistake, and Commander Rethan would be the one to witness it all. The countdown had begun. Commander Rethan stood on the bridge of his personal scout ship, staring at the desolate remains of Earth through the viewport. The planet was a dead world now, its once thriving cities reduced to nothing but craters and dust. The Empire had done its job well, too well. No signs of life remained, at least not on the surface. But Rethan wasn't here for the surface. He was here for what lay beneath. His ship hovered above the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of Earth's oceans. The Empire had ignored the oceans during the invasion, focusing instead on Earth's cities and military bases. After all, what threat could a simple body of water pose to the might of the Empire? That was the mistake, Rethan realized. The energy signature he had detected before Earth's destruction had come from here. Something had been hidden in the depths, and now it was time to find out what. Begin deep sea scan, Rethan ordered. His crew, a small group of trusted officers, followed his command without question. They were the few who had shared his doubts about the Empire's victory. The scanner hummed as it sent waves of energy deep into the water, searching for any trace of what had caused that final signal. Rethan tapped his fingers against the control panel, his heart pounding with anticipation. If he was wrong, if this was just a natural energy fluctuation, then he would be dismissed as a paranoid fool. But if he was right, the console beeped. The officer at the scanning station frowned, adjusting the controls. "Commander, we have something." Rethan leaned forward. "What is it?" "There's a structure down there. A massive one. It's not natural." The bridge fell silent. A structure, deep beneath the ocean. That shouldn't be possible. Earth's technology had been primitive compared to the Empire's. They had no means to build something that could withstand the crushing pressure of the trench. And yet, the readings were clear. There was something down there. Something big. "Can you identify it?" Rethan asked. The officer hesitated. "It's metallic, and it's giving off weak power signals. Whatever it is, it's old, but it's still functional." Rethan's pulse quickened. This was it. This was what the Empire had missed. While they had focused on destroying Earth's cities, humanity's true power had been hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. "Prepare the deep-sea probes," he ordered. "I want a visual." The probes launched, small drones equipped with high-powered cameras and scanners. They descended into the darkness of the trench, disappearing into the abyss. The bridge was silent as everyone waited, watching the screens as the first images came through. The sight made Rethan's breath catch in his throat. It was a fleet, an entire fleet of warships hidden beneath the ocean. They were massive, far larger than anything humanity had used during their final battle. Their hulls were ancient, worn by time and the crushing pressure of the deep, but they were still intact, and more importantly, they were still armed. "These aren't just ships," one of the officers whispered. "This is a dreadnought fleet." Rethan's mind raced. Humanity had lost the war, but they had been preparing for something far greater. These weren't just warships. They were last resort weapons, hidden away in case the worst happened. The Empire had thought it had wiped out humanity's fleet, but it had only destroyed the visible forces. The real threat had been buried beneath the ocean, waiting. A sudden alert flashed across the screen. "Commander," the scanning officer said, his voice tense. "One of the ships just powered on." Rethan's eyes widened. "What?" "The energy readings. They're increasing. It's waking up." The bridge exploded into chaos as alarms blared. The once dormant fleet was coming to life. The ship they had scanned, a massive dreadnought larger than any vessel in the Empire's fleet, was activating. Lights flickered along its hull, weapon systems hummed as they powered up, and a low, rumbling sound echoed through the water. "Impossible," Rethan whispered. "They should be dead. They should all be." The ocean exploded. A massive surge of energy erupted from the trench, sending shockwaves through the water. The deep-sea probes were instantly destroyed, their feeds cutting to static. Rethan's ship rocked violently as the force of the energy pulse reached them. And then, through the dissipating darkness, something emerged. The dreadnought rose from the depths like a ghost from the past. Its ancient hull, covered in deep-sea corrosion, gleamed under the dim light of the dying sun. But its weapons were undamaged. Its engines burned to life, and the sheer power of its presence sent a chill through everyone on board. Then, a signal came through, an old human transmission frequency. The ship was broadcasting a message. Rethan stared at the screen as the words appeared in old human language. "Humanity's war is not over. The Empire had made a terrible mistake, and now it was too late to stop what was coming." The dreadnought loomed above the ocean, its ancient hull gleaming under the dim sunlight that barely reached its surface. The ship had been buried in the abyss for 500,000 years, yet it looked as if it had been waiting for this very moment. Commander Rethan and his crew stood frozen on the bridge of their scout ship, staring at the impossible sight before them. This shouldn't be happening," one of Rethan's officers muttered. But it was happening. The ship was awake. Alarms blared across the console as more readings flooded in. "Commander, the energy levels are rising across the fleet," the scanning officer shouted. "Not just this ship. The entire dreadnought fleet is coming online." Rethan's hands tightened into fists. It was no longer a theory. no longer some relic of the past. These warships weren't just old remains of a forgotten civilization. They were fully operational. And if the Empire had known, they never would have left Earth alone for so long. "Send a message to the High Command," Rethan ordered, his voice sharp. "Tell them we found something beyond our understanding." But before his crew could act, the ship's communications panel crackled with interference. A message was coming through. The entire bridge fell into an eerie silence as an old human voice echoed through the speakers. It wasn't static. It wasn't corrupted. It was clear, strong. "Humanity's war is not over." A chill ran down Rethan's spine. He turned to his officers, but they were just as stunned as he was. "How?" the communications officer whispered. "Commander, humans have been extinct for 500,000 years. There's no way someone is still alive to send this." But the message wasn't over. The screen on their console flickered, displaying old human script. "If you are reading this, then we were right. You came back. And that means we were never truly defeated." Rethan swallowed. This wasn't a distress signal. This wasn't a remnant of the past. This was a warning. "Commander," the scanning officer called out, his voice shaking. "I don't think we were the first ones to trigger the fleet's awakening." Rethan's gaze snapped to him. "Explain." The officer pointed to the readings on the screen. Energy fluctuations. The fleet wasn't dead. It was in a deep hibernation state, waiting. Something must have tripped an automated failsafe. Rethan didn't like where this was going. "Are you saying these ships have been programmed to reactivate if an enemy returns to Earth?" The officer gave a slow nod. "Yes, Commander. And if that's the case, then..." Before he could finish, the Dreadnoughts' weapons system roared to life. Bright red lights flickered along its hull, and deep rumbling vibrations shook the air. The ancient warship was locking onto them. "Emergency thrusters," Rethan shouted. "Get us out of here. Now." But it was too late. A bright flash erupted from the Dreadnought's primary weapon, sending a shockwave through the sky. The Empire's scout ship was thrown violently to the side, alarms screaming as the shields took the brunt of the impact. The ship just fired a warning shot. An officer yelled. Rethan gritted his teeth. They had to escape, but that ship wasn't going to let them. The Dreadnought was testing them, evaluating their response. "We need to retreat," the navigator shouted. "If that thing fires again, we're done." "No," Rethan said, his voice firm. "We have to understand what we're dealing with." The ship trembled as another energy spike flared from the Dreadnought. The scanning officer turned pale. "Commander, it's not just one ship." Rethan's breath caught in his throat as the screen updated. One by one, the entire fleet beneath the ocean began rising. Massive warships, ancient and terrifying, emerged from the water. There were dozens of them, each as large as the Empire's capital ships, but their designs were unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered before. These were not mere warships. They were built for something far greater. A final message flashed on the screen. "We never surrendered." The realization struck Rethan like a physical blow. Humanity had planned for this. They had known they might fall. They had known the enemy might return. And so they had left behind a fleet that would awaken only when the time was right. Now, after 500,000 years, that time had come, and the galaxy was not ready. The Dreadnoughts emerged from the ocean in perfect formation, their massive hulls gleaming under the dim ancient sun. Water cascaded from their armored surfaces as they ascended, revealing weapons that no empire in the galaxy had ever seen before. The sight alone sent a chill through Commander Rethan's body. "By the stars," one of his officers muttered. The ancient warships weren't just awakening, they were preparing for battle. The energy readings spiked dangerously, and Rethan knew what it meant. These ships were scanning the system, identifying threats, and calculating their next move. And if his scout ship was still in their sights when that calculation finished, they wouldn't live to tell the tale. engines at full power. Rethen barked, "Get us out of range now." The pilot didn't hesitate. The ship's thrusters roared as it accelerated, speeding away from the rising fleet. But even as they put distance between themselves and the Dreadnoughts, something terrifying became clear. "They're tracking us," the scanning officer said, his voice tight with fear. "Commander, their targeting systems have locked onto us. And it's not just one ship, it's the entire fleet." Rethen's grip on the console tightened. "How is that possible?" Another officer blurted out. "They just woke up. They shouldn't be able to react this fast." But Rethen already knew the answer. "These aren't just ships," he said grimly. "They're war machines built for a war that never ended." The screen flickered again. Another message. Another warning. "Do not flee. You are in restricted space. State your allegiance." Silence filled the bridge. Every officer exchanged uneasy glances. "Commander," the communications officer hesitated. "They think we're enemies." Rethen swallowed hard. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for tens of thousands of years, crushing opposition wherever it arose. They had rewritten history, erasing all mention of those who stood against them. But there was one name they could never truly erase, one name that still sent fear into the hearts of even the most powerful rulers: humanity. And now, humanity's war machines were awake, and they saw the Empire as a threat. Rethen took a deep breath. "We can't afford to be seen as hostiles," he said. "Open a channel. Send them a transmission." The officer hesitated. "What should we say?" Rethen looked at the fleet ahead of them. They had two choices: make contact or prepare for destruction. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them we are not their enemy." The transmission was sent, and for a few agonizing seconds, there was no response. The warships hovered in the sky, their weapons armed, their systems locked onto the Empire's scout ship. Then, finally, a reply came. A single line of text appeared on the screen. "Then prove it." And without warning, the Dreadnoughts moved. Their engines flared, and they began their ascent, straight toward the Empire's fleet in orbit. A horrifying realization struck Rethen. They weren't just waking up. They were preparing to fight. And nothing in the galaxy was ready for what was about to happen. The vastness of the sky above the fleet seemed to grow darker as the Dreadnoughts moved. The massive warships began to split apart, like a formation of predators closing in on their prey. Rethen watched, wide-eyed, as the once silent machines of Earth came alive, their systems pulsing with energy. The stars around them flickered and dimmed as the Dreadnoughts powered up their weapons, casting a foreboding shadow over the Empire's fleet. "Commander, they're locking onto us," the communications officer said, her voice trembling. "Their weapons are online." Rethen's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just a threat. It was a war that was being rekindled. The Dreadnoughts weren't interested in negotiations. They didn't care about the Empire's power or its boasts of victory. They were here for one thing: to protect Earth, and they were ready to do whatever it took to achieve that goal. "Set all shields to maximum strength," Rethen ordered. "Prepare for combat. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but we'll be ready." His officers scrambled, activating every defensive measure they could think of. Yet, despite all their preparations, they were facing a force that had been dormant for centuries, a force whose full capabilities were still unknown. Each ship in the enemy fleet towered over their ships like ancient titans, its weapons designed to destroy anything in its path. The first blast came suddenly, a pulse of bright energy that shot from the lead dreadnought. It was too fast to react to. The beam cut through space like a blade, streaking toward the nearest of the Empire's ships. The enemy ship never stood a chance. It exploded in a burst of fire and metal, vanishing from the radar instantly. Shields failing. A panicked officer shouted, "We're losing power. They've breached the main hull." Rethen's mind raced. They had underestimated Earth's legacy, and now they were paying for it. The Empire had spent centuries conquering, leaving planets in ruins, but they had never come across anything like this. The Dreadnoughts were far beyond anything they had ever encountered. The devastation they had just witnessed was a preview of what was to come. "We need to fall back," one of his senior officers urged, eyes wide with fear. "There's no way we can win this fight." Rethan shook his head. "Not yet. We can't retreat now. Earth's machines are waking up, and we're the first to challenge them in 500,000 years. We won't back down. We need to find a way to fight back." But as the Dreadnoughts moved closer, their imposing figures overshadowing their ships, Rethan realized that their weapons were more advanced than he had ever imagined. Earth's ships weren't just made for war. They were crafted to be invincible. Their technology had advanced in ways that no one could have predicted. The Empire, with all its might, had nothing that could match the firepower of a single one of these Dreadnoughts. A second blast fired from the Dreadnoughts, and this time, it struck the lead ship of the Empire's fleet. The explosion that followed was deafening, tearing apart the hull in a catastrophic shockwave. The massive ship fell from the sky, its systems frying as it crashed into the planet below. Rethan's jaw tightened. They were losing. Fast. "We need to come up with a plan," Rethan muttered to himself. He couldn't afford to panic. The Empire's legacy had always been built on strategy and cunning, but these machines, they didn't think like any other enemy he'd ever fought. They were relentless, calculating, and they had one goal: to reclaim the Earth for humanity, no matter what the cost. "Commander," the officer at the scanner shouted, pulling Rethan out of his thoughts, "there's something strange. Their ships, they're coordinating. They're all communicating with each other in real time. They're using some kind of advanced link." Rethan's mind spun. A coordinated attack. It was unlike anything he'd seen before. The Empire had long been proud of its ability to command vast fleets, but this was something different. This was precision, something far more advanced than the Empire's methods. "It's a unified front," Rethan said quietly. "They're working together as one. It's almost as if they were designed for this." The realization hit Rethan like a thunderclap. These Dreadnoughts weren't just relics of the past. They were Earth's defense, its guardians, and they had been waiting for the right moment to return. And now, that moment had come. As the Dreadnoughts closed in, Rethan knew one thing: this wasn't just a battle. This was the beginning of a new war, one that would decide the future of the galaxy. The Empire had celebrated their victory far too early, and now, humanity's forgotten might was about to remind them why Earth had once been the most feared force in the universe. The Dreadnoughts were coming, and the Empire had no idea what they were truly up against. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. The wreckage of the Empire's once mighty fleet floated lifelessly in the void, shattered beyond recognition. Fires burned in the oxygen pockets of broken ships, flickering like dying stars. The silence of space was only broken by the distant echoes of explosions and the eerie hum of Earth's ancient dreadnoughts, still advancing like unstoppable titans. Rethan stood on the bridge of his heavily damaged command ship, his mind racing. He had spent his life believing that the Empire was the ultimate power in the galaxy. He had led fleets into countless victories, crushed rebellions, and watched as civilizations bowed before the might of the Empire's war machine. But now, all of that seemed meaningless. Everything he had ever known had been rewritten in the course of a single battle. The ancient warships of Earth had changed everything. "Commander, we have to escape," his second-in-command urged. The young officer's face was pale, his hands shaking as he clutched the edge of the control panel. "We can't fight them. We don't even understand what they are." Rethan didn't respond. He stared at the massive dreadnoughts, their hulls dark and worn but still unbreakable. He had thought them old, outdated, and irrelevant to modern warfare. But they had been something else entirely, dormant gods, awakened by the foolishness of the Empire. One of the dreadnoughts moved closer, its colossal cannon slowly turning toward Rethan's ship. He felt a deep primal fear take hold of him. It was the same fear that weaker species had felt when facing the Empire's fleets. But now, the Empire was the weaker species. A transmission came through. For the first time, the human's machine spoke. The voice was ancient, mechanical, yet filled with something terrifying. Purpose. Leave. It was not a request. It was not a plea. It was a command. The Empire had never been given commands before. It had always been the one to issue them. Rethan's pride told him to resist, to find a way to fight, to refuse this order. But his instincts screamed at him to listen. He looked at the wreckage of his fleet. Hundreds of thousands of lives had been lost in mere moments. The Empire had come here as conquerors, only to be humbled like frightened children before an unstoppable force. "Commander," the officer whispered, "what do we do?" Rethan clenched his fists. He hated this. He hated that he had no choice. "We leave." The order was given, and what remained of the Empire's once proud fleet turned away. Ships limped into hyperspace, some barely holding together as they fled the battlefield. They had lost. Completely, utterly lost. As Rethan's ship prepared to jump, he cast one last glance at the Dreadnoughts. They didn't pursue. They didn't need to. They had made their message clear. Earth was not theirs to take. The Empire had celebrated their victory too soon. They had thought themselves rulers of the galaxy. But now, they knew the truth. Earth had never been conquered. Earth had only been waiting. And when the time came, it had reminded them why humanity was once the most feared force in the universe.